David Langston, CEO of the hotel group. I think we need to talk. Marcus wasn't sure what to expect when he arrived back at the hotel. The same grand entrance, the same polished floors. But this time, the energy was different. Employees glanced at him with something that felt like quiet support. As he stepped into a private meeting room, he saw Sarah sitting across from the CEO, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. The manager who had fired Marcus stood to the side, looking pale and nervous. David Langston cleared his throat. "Marcus, first of all, let me say this. What happened to you was wrong. I've seen the footage, I've read the reports, and there's no excuse for it." He shot a glance at the manager, who shifted uncomfortably. "This hotel prides itself on excellence, but that should extend to the way we treat our employees, not just our guests." Marcus didn't know what to say. Was this really happening? Was he getting his job back? But then Langston continued. "We'd like to offer you not just your position back, but a promotion. Head server with a raise." Sarah looked at Marcus, waiting for his response. But something in his gut told him there was more to this. He had spent years following rules, working hard, keeping his head down. And where had it gotten him? Fired for saving a life. He took a deep breath. "I appreciate the offer," he said slowly, "but I'm not coming back." The room went silent. Even Sarah seemed surprised. Marcus stood up. "I don't want a job where doing the right thing gets me punished first and rewarded only when the world is watching. I deserve better than that." As he walked out, he felt lighter than he had in years. He didn't know what was next, but for the first time, he was in control of his own story. As Marcus stepped out of the hotel for the last time, a weight seemed to lift off his shoulders. He had spent years trying to fit into a place that didn't value him for who he was. Walking away wasn't just about rejecting their offer. It was about reclaiming his self-worth and setting a new standard for himself. News of Marcus's decision spread just as quickly as the story of his firing. Social media was ablaze with support. People praised him for standing up for what was right, even when it meant walking away from a promotion. Offers began pouring in from other businesses that valued his integrity and courage. Local restaurants reached out, not just offering jobs, but promising a workplace where his values would be respected. Sarah, inspired by Marcus's stand, started a campaign highlighting the importance of compassion and humanity in the workplace. She shared their story on parenting blogs and community forums, emphasizing how crucial it was for companies to recognize and reward acts of kindness, not penalize them. Parents across the country chimed in, sharing their own stories of everyday heroes who often went unrecognized. The hotel, meanwhile, couldn't escape the fallout. Bookings dropped, and management was forced to make a public apology, promising changes in their policies and additional training for their staff. The manager who had fired Marcus quietly left the company, his actions a stark reminder of what happens when rules overshadow basic human decency. As for Marcus, he found a new position at a family-owned cafe just down the street. The environment was different, warmer, more genuine. Customers came in just to meet the man who had stood up for himself and a helpless child. His story became a reminder that doing the right thing might not always be easy, but it's always worth it. In the end, Marcus didn't just save a baby's life. He sparked a conversation about what really matters in our workplaces and our communities. And sometimes, walking away from something that doesn't value you is the most powerful statement you can make. The story of Marcus isn't just about a heroic act. It's about knowing your worth, standing up for what's right, and inspiring others to do the same. And in that, he found a new purpose, a chance to be more than just a hotel worker, but a voice for change. Back inside, the atmosphere remained tense. The baby's mother, still holding her daughter protectively, turned to the stunned crowd. "You all saw what happened. This man saved my child's life, and they fired him for it." Her voice shook with anger, but the manager remained unmoved. Some guests awkwardly turned back to their meals, unsure of how to react. Others whispered in hushed voices, exchanging glances of disbelief. One of the older gentlemen at the table, a longtime hotel regular, cleared his throat and spoke. "I understand protocol, but surely an exception could be made." The boy acted bravely. A younger couple nearby nodded in agreement, but the manager stood firm. "We appreciate your concern, sir, but our policies are in place for a reason. If every employee acted on impulse, we would have chaos." Outside, Marcus took a deep breath, staring at the city lights flickering beyond the hotel entrance. His phone buzzed in his pocket, but he ignored it. He had no idea what to do next. His rent was due in a week, and jobs like this weren't easy to come by. But more than that, it was the principle of it. He had done the right thing. So why did it feel like he was being punished for it? A voice behind him made him turn. It was the baby's mother. "Marcus, wait." She hurried over, adjusting her daughter in her arms. "This isn't right. I want to help." Marcus hesitated. He had spent his whole life keeping his head down, avoiding trouble. But maybe this time, staying silent wasn't an option. Maybe this was bigger than just him. He met her determined gaze. "What are you thinking?" She glanced back at the hotel, then at him. "We make sure the world hears what happened." Marcus hesitated, searching the mother's face for any sign of doubt, but she looked determined. He had never been the kind of person to stir up trouble, but this wasn't just about him anymore. It was about the kind of world where doing the right thing could cost you everything. He nodded. "Okay, let's do it." Within hours, the story was online. The mother, whose name was Sarah, had shared everything: how her daughter had nearly choked, how Marcus had saved her, and how he had been fired on the spot. She didn't just post it to social media. She tagged news outlets, parenting groups, and even the hotel itself. Within minutes, comments started pouring in. "This is outrageous. How can a company fire someone for saving a baby?" "I was thinking of booking a stay at this hotel. Not anymore." "We need to support Marcus," who's starting a fundraiser for him. By the next morning, the hotel's official page was flooded with backlash. People were demanding answers, calling for boycotts, and pressuring management to reverse their decision. At first, the hotel ignored it, hoping the outrage would fade. But then came the real twist. Security footage from the restaurant leaked online. Someone inside the hotel had sent it anonymously, and the clip was damning. It showed everything: the moment the baby started choking, the way guests froze in fear, and then Marcus stepping in without hesitation. It was undeniable proof that he had done exactly what any decent person would have. But the part that shocked people the most wasn't just his heroism, it was what happened after. In the footage, the manager could be seen pulling Marcus aside, speaking in a hushed but firm voice. The look on Marcus's face when he realized he was being fired was heartbreaking. He wasn't just let go, he was dismissed like a problem that the hotel wanted to erase. Now, the pressure was greater than ever. The hotel was losing control of the narrative, and someone inside had turned against them. But who? And why now? Marcus had no idea, but one thing was clear: this was far from over. The video of Marcus's firing spread like wildfire. News stations picked up the story, and within 24 hours, the hotel was in full crisis mode. Their social media pages were flooded with angry comments, guests were canceling reservations, and even employees were quietly speaking out about unfair policies behind the scenes. Then, out of nowhere, Marcus got a call. The number was unfamiliar, but when he answered, the voice on the other end made him sit up straight. "Marcus, this is David Langston, CEO of the hotel group. I think we need to talk." Marcus wasn't sure what to expect when he arrived back at the hotel. The same grand entrance, the same polished floors, but this time, the energy was different. Employees glanced at him with something that felt like quiet support. As he stepped into a private meeting room, he saw Sarah sitting across from the CEO, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. The manager who had fired Marcus stood to the side, looking pale and nervous. Imagine you're at a fancy hotel, enjoying a luxurious dinner, when suddenly chaos erupts. Glasses clink, conversations hush, and all eyes turn to a single table. A baby, barely a year old, is choking, her tiny face turning red, her parents frozen in sheer panic. Every second feels like an eternity. Guests look around, unsure of what to do. And then, out of nowhere, a young hotel worker springs into action. Meet Marcus. He's a hard-working server, always going the extra mile to make sure guests have the best experience. But tonight, his job isn't just about serving food, it's about saving a life. Without hesitation, Marcus rushes to the baby, his training and instincts kicking in. He carefully picks her up, positioning her the right way, and starts performing the Heimlich maneuver for infants. The entire room holds its breath. Then, after what feels like forever, a small gasp fills the air. The baby coughs. She's breathing again. The mother bursts into tears, clutching her child in relief. The room erupts in applause. But just as the tension begins to fade, something shocking happens. Instead of praise from his managers, Marcus is pulled aside. There's no thank you, no recognition, just a cold, stern expression from his boss. Moments later, he's fired. His crime: disrupting service and breaking protocol. The same hands that saved a life are now empty, his job taken away in an instant. How could this happen? How does a hero turn into a rule breaker in the eyes of his employer? And what happens next for Marcus? Does he fight back? Do people rally behind him? Or is this just another case of corporate policies overshadowing basic human decency? This is more than just a story about a hotel worker. It's about the choices we make, the values we uphold, and what truly matters when it comes down to life and rules. Stay with us as we break down what really happened that night and the shocking aftermath that left everyone talking. Marcus couldn't believe what he was hearing. Fired for saving a baby's life. He stood there, still catching his breath, his hands slightly shaking from the adrenaline. The restaurant, once filled with applause, had fallen into an awkward silence. Guests whispered among themselves, exchanging confused glances. The baby's mother, still holding her child close, looked up in disbelief. "But he saved her," she stammered, turning to the manager. "He saved my daughter's life." The manager, a middle-aged man in a perfectly pressed suit, kept his expression cold and professional. "I understand, ma'am," he said in a low, controlled voice. "But this is a high-end establishment. Our staff are trained to follow protocol." He abandoned his post, disrupted service, and caused a scene in the middle of dinner. Marcus felt his chest tighten. Was this really happening? Had he made a mistake by acting on instinct instead of waiting for someone else to step in? But who would have? No one had moved. No one had even known what to do. The mother's voice grew louder, frustration replacing her initial relief. "A scene? My daughter could have died, and you're worried about service." Several guests nodded in agreement, murmuring among themselves. Others simply looked uncomfortable, unsure whether to get involved. Marcus wanted to defend himself, to explain that he hadn't fought twice. He just did what he had to do. But as he looked at his boss's face, he could already see the decision was final. "Marcus," the manager continued, lowering his voice as if to sound reasonable. "You're a great worker, but this isn't how we handle things here. I'll make sure you get a good reference, but you need to leave." Marcus swallowed hard. His job, the one he had worked so hard to keep, was slipping away over something that should have been celebrated. As he grabbed his apron and turned toward the exit, he felt the weight of every step. The baby's mother wasn't done fighting. She stepped forward, eyes blazing. "This isn't right. I won't let this go." Marcus had no idea what would happen next, but he knew one thing: this wasn't over. Marcus stepped out of the hotel's grand dining hall, the heavy doors shutting behind him with a quiet finality. The murmur of guests faded, but his heart was still pounding. He had worked at the hotel for almost 2 years, always showing up on time, always doing his best. And now, after everything, he was just dismissed, like he was nothing.